Okay, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to install an isolation valve. Now the isolation valve is a very, very useful thing to have on your pipework because it allows you to change your taps without having to drain down the whole system of water or turn your mains pressure off. Or it also is going to allow you, if you have any emergencies or you have a leak, to turn the isolation valve off and just isolate any problem areas. So I tend to like to put isolation valves on everything. I'll put them on the bath, I'll put them on the toilet, I'll put them on the basin, anything you can really. And it works in a very, very simple way. What you have here is you have a little slot that focuses on there. If I push that screwdriver into the slot and turn it, what actually happens is it's closing off the gate. Now I don't know if you can actually see through there. If not, I'll try and redo the video. But if you can see the light through it, I'll turn it off. Basically, if you can see light, it means water can get through. If you close it down, then that would stop the water being able to get through. And that's basically how an isolation valve works. So you'd have a bit of pipe. If my finger were to act as a pipe, it would go on one bit of pipe there, one bit of pipe there. With my hand would be basically where the taps would be, and that would stop any water from going through, which allows us to service or change the taps. You need some tools to do this job. I'm going to show you how to do it very, very quick and easy. As you've already seen, you need a flat-headed screwdriver to be able to turn the isolation valve on and off. Very important that you actually turn the isolation valve into its off position before you fit it, because you might have to do it in an emergency and you might want to have to stop the water coming through. So that is very, very important. You're also going to need some grips, an adjustable spanner or an adjustable wrench, as some may call it, a pipe slice, that's a pipe cutter. This is going to cut around the pipe. And finally, some jointing compounds. Some people might use PTFE tape. I like to use jointing compound. You just place that inside. I'll show you in a second. That stops any water from sneaking through where you'll tighten the nut. We'll go through that in a second. I'm just going to position the camera now so as you can see the job that I've got to do. I've already done one earlier. So here's the basin. As you can see, we're in the middle of a bathroom rip out. Now, I've already installed one isolation valve there. You can just see it. I'll try and get a little bit more light on there. You can see where I've cut the pipe, but you can also see the pipe just behind does not have an isolation valve on it. So I'm going to be cutting that and basically replicating what I've already done with the one that you can see. Okay, we've got a slight problem, which is that we need the water to stop coming out this tap. It's not going to be enough to just turn it off, because still, if we were to cut the pipe underneath, which you hopefully can see there, that pipe there, which you just see is with a chip on it just there, that's still live. So we need to cut off the supply to that hot pipe. Now, in this house, we have a gravity-fed system. So, here is a hot water cylinder. That hot water cylinder is fed from a tank up in the loft, okay? But this valve here is going to shut off the hot water to the cylinder, which is what we want to do. So, all I'm going to do is I'm going to change this, I'm going to turn this valve, it's called a gate valve, to the off position. That is now completely off. I turned it to the right as much as I could. So if we now go back into here now, the flow on the tap, we can just get that to focus, has been reduced by quite a lot. And there you go. So that water is now off, and I will now be able to go and to cut the pipe and apply the compound and fit the isolation valve. Okay, now we know there is no water in the pipe. I'm going to take the pipe slice. Now we know that this pipe is fine. It's actually the pipe behind it that we want to cut. So, I put the pipe slice onto there. Some people use a hacksaw. You're not going to get a straight edge if you do so, although it is another way to do it. If you do, you're going to have to make sure that you file down the edges of the pipe once you've cut it. Now, as I'm turning this pipe, what's happening is it's cutting into the pipe with a wheel. The wheel has a bladed edge on it, and it's now turning and cutting into that, and I can actually feel that that has cut already. Let me just move this so you can hopefully see what I've done. You can see where that pipe slice has cut the pipe. There's now a gap between it. Just excuse me because I'm trying to film and do this at the same time, but I now try and take that off, which is not the easiest thing to do one-handed. You can now see that the two parts of the pipe are completely separate. Now, the top part of the pipe I'm not going to need, because in this instance I'm taking this basin out. So what's going to happen is, and I can't just pop it on now, my valve, which you can see here, is going to go on top of there. But I'm not going to pop it on there straight away. I've got to do something else first, otherwise it's just not going to fit. Okay, here's the isolation valve, which, as I said earlier on, is set into its off position. If you just remember, if we just look at that again, that's on, that's off. Okay, so it's now off. There'd be nothing that could get through there, as you can hopefully see. Okay, now these have screw threads on, and they're called compression fittings. But what I'm actually going to do is, the idea being that the pipe will go through there and it compresses on when it tightens up. But this is where I use the compound. Remember the compound I showed you earlier? I'm going to take a bit of the compound on my finger. You should be able to see that. Hopefully we can get the camera to focus. Or not. There we go. Okay. Now that bit of compound there that you can see, I'm actually going to put into the thread. You can see me wiping it on the inside of that. And there's a very good reason for that. That is going to help make the seal. So when that screws on there, it's going to tighten up and squeeze against this pipe that you can see here. So now you've seen that there, I'm going to place this. Hopefully you can still see that. There it is, going onto there. Okay, that is now in position, but we can't just walk away and leave that now. Let me try and zoom in on that ever so slightly for you. Get a bit better an angle. This needs to be tightened, okay? Otherwise it will just, you can see when you turn the water back on, the water's just going to push that off, and we don't want that. I'm going to turn this around to that way, because if I ever need to get to it to turn it off, I'll need to come in from this angle. So this is where your grips and your adjustable wrench come into play. All I do is, with my grips, I place the grips onto the top, and my spanner, or wrench should I say, is going to go onto this nut here. Now I can hand tighten it to a certain extent, and I'm just tightening it as much as I can now. Now what you're doing is you're squeezing that olive, that little copper ring that was inside, is now squeezing against that pipe as I tighten it up. But we're in a very, very confined working space here, so it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. And you will find, as with most plumbing jobs, that you're really having to basically make the most of the space available. It's not easy, particularly if you're working under baths, basins, or even under the kitchen sink, that sort of thing. But I can now feel now I can't really tighten that anymore. And that's it. That's the job done. I'll see if I can give you another view. There you go. You can see it in situ. And now we're ready. We can actually take this whole basin out without fear of the water going anywhere. What it also means is we can actually go back here and turn the water back on. You may even be able to hear it turning on there. The water is now working its way down into that cylinder, which you can see, and filling that cylinder up with water, which in turn pops out of here. And that's it. Hopefully that showed you what you need to know, and particularly if you yourself are going to attempt to do such a thing, the most important thing is to make sure that the water is off. Until next time, thanks for watching. And don't forget to click somewhere down there's a subscribe button. There'll be a lot more tutorials to come.